Meeting to order. All right. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You're none. All right. Up next is approval of the minutes from our November 13th meeting. Did anybody have any corrections after reading through the minutes? None? If so, I would motion to approve the November 13 minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. All right, that brings us along to the public forum. Don't see anybody out there. So we will continue on to line item 5 on our agenda, which is the CLG annual report.
Good evening. Every year, staff is tasked with preparing the report to submit to the state, the CLG annual report. And so it's very typical that the work plan is one of the major items for your direction and guidance, but then also there's an opportunity to look at successes and challenges from the year, things that you felt went well or were challenging and maybe didn't go as well as had been as hoped. So I've put together some questions for you. These are directly from the application. It's quite lengthy and it includes a lot of different things. What we will do is after we get your input, we will put together a draft of the report and bring it back to you for the next meeting for your approval. After that time, it then goes to the city council for their approval, and then it's sent on to the state. So we do this every year. And sometimes over the years, the report has changed a little bit, has gotten lengthier and so forth, but it actually is a really good opportunity to consider historic preservation in the city and how it's progressed. We also include activities of the Ames History Museum because the council does help fund the History Museum and they have a contract with the museum each year for how the monies that the council allocates will be utilized. So that will be included as well for activities. So I'll just turn it over to you to go through and have a discussion. I'll take notes. If you have questions of me, I'm happy to answer the questions. I put a couple of resources in there for you. The current 2023 work plan, and then also a copy of the goals, objectives, and action steps from the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan. And that plan is a guiding document that should be reviewed as you look toward 2024 and doing your work plan. And what I've typically done is include any of the work plan items, a reference to the historic preservation plan. This is an opportunity to show that they're connected.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All right. Yes, working through the memo that was sent to us, it kind of starts off with asking questions about things we worked on or accomplished over the past year or over 2023. So I think that'd be a good spot to start maybe as a recap. It's got a list of items, but first one it asks to describe as any historic preservation planning that we did. Examples include development or revision of the preservation plan, development of a work plan for your commission, etc.
You don't necessarily have to have an answer for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, we made the commission last December made a work plan, so we're making one now.
Right,
So that
that's
one's
an
checked off.
annual,
Yeah, that one's
annual
always
thing,
occurs this
so-
time. So. Also asks if we provided technical assistance on any historic preservation issues or projects, sponsored public educational programming in historic preservation, or any work on design guidelines and standards. So probably just easiest to recap any initiatives we've done the past year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been working through modifications in regards to council looking to add ADUs. So have worked directly on the ordinance. We had a history. I'm trying to think what we called the event, but we had a
It's the
history walk event
515
there
night.
with aligned with 515. Yeah, there
Yeah.
during the summer. And I believe that was aligned with the museum as well, partnered in that.
Yep.
That's a good education event for the public.
Yep. Information and outreach to Chautauqua and Ridgewood.
Yep.
That was a big part of it.
Mhm.
And looking down the 2023 work plan, the first 3 bullets are all checked off, or at least we've put some good work into each one. And the third one that was successful is reach out to Old Town Historic District property owners with educational materials on preserving and improving historic properties. So the way that got implemented was in the neighborhood newsletter. We started putting a blurb about different things like tax incentives and different resources. So, and that's going to be an ongoing thing.
How often does the newsletter come out, Angie?
It's about quarterly.
Okay.
I'll say about.
Anything else to mention or of note?
We did that. I think you mentioned that doing the Main Street thing with the
Mhm.
History Museum. And I don't know, that may comes under another,
Yeah, I think that would
Thing, I'm not
probably
sure.
fall under the. I think it could be public educational programming. I would think.
Mhm.
Mhm. All right.
then of course our award program, our Preservation Week activities. We, I'm sure staff will
Yeah.
include those things, but
Mhm.
those are the things that I can think of right now, other than working on the ordinance,
Mhm. That was a big one.
which is a biggie.
All right, and then it rolls into issues, challenges, or successes. Asking if there was any of those that our commission encountered this year. Then it goes on to self-assessment of work plan accomplishments.
I really didn't have a chance to go over to review the work plan or the report questionnaire. So I'm thinking staff has always done a really good job putting it together, and then and we still have January to comment on it. So would it maybe be a good idea to just let staff go ahead and prepare the report and update the plan if they don't mind doing that? And then we can, if we need to add anything. next time we can do that, make sure, or change anything. Because I think we're communicating pretty well. I think we all are kind of on
They keep good
going
track
the
of
same
us.
direction.
Others.
So,
I think I'm good with most of that. There is one question on here that maybe we should touch on, just in case anybody has any personal preferences on it, but it asks about training topics and if there's any topics that would be most helpful for our commission kind of in this coming year.
well, yeah, we've talked about having the National Alliance of Commissioners, Preservation Commissioners, trying to get them for a workshop, which we followed up a little bit on that last year, but never really made any contacts. So I think we have worked hard enough on the ordinance to this point that it would be really helpful if we could get that group to come and help with that. I think that I still think that would be a really good workshop, and I think it would help other communities because they would be notified. All the CLGs in the state would be notified and be eligible to work in a workshop like that. So, that I think we could be a little more specific in that activity in the plan.
So I think that's two things. It sounds like that might be part of a work plan that you want to do. But I think the question here for training topics could align, but I think it's kind of asking the state what topics you would like them to sponsor. Like there was the one on the National Register nomination that they sponsored, and then also they have topics at the Preserve Iowa conference. So I think they're trying to understand what kind of topics you might be interested in going to, whether it's something we sponsor or whether you go to it somewhere else.
Right. That's an option too, because I know they'd be available for training. I think it would be a good thing for the National Alliance to get, because then we could get more of a universal, aspect of it. So it's a really good group. They have an annual conference and everything, so they're very reputable. So I would think.
What was the
That-
topic you wanted? Was it on the,
I think it probably would be on certificate of appropriateness review in how it would have to do with how ordinances present it and what's a good way, and if there's issues with our review process, there'd be professionals that could look at it and give guidance on changes and just in general what should be included and how to approach making it more understandable and easier for people to follow. I think that includes about everything. Is that
yeah,
is that
that's
enough?
helpful.
Okay.
We will need to go through and get more input on the 2024 work plan.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just take the 2023 and update it or eliminate things or add to it.
Yeah, I think what we've had in that last year's plan is, just we're going to be continuing basically what we
Can
did
we go
last
through
year.
each item and see how it fits with what you want or how
Yeah,
you want
that'd
to
be fine.
change?
Sure.
we can spin through those quick. So we can kind of start at the top. Angie touched on some of these that we've already kind of been checking off, but we can probably revise some of them to the next step in the process if we need to. Like under the facilitate dissemination of historic preservation information, collaborate with the Ames History Museum to host a community history event in 2023. I believe that was the 515 event. Is it as easy as saying that we want to just continue that event again, or do we want to put in there that we're trying to create another event in addition to that?
It's a good question. It was a great event.
Mhm.
A lot of commission members helped participate. I saw a lot of happy people walking around with pamphlets. I think Edie put a lot of time into that on a volunteer basis to contribute. So perhaps, I'm not sure. I haven't talked to anybody at the chamber. I'm not sure if they're planning on doing it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know whether
Okay.
that's the question, whether they would be doing that event again.
Yeah. So we need to find that out. And then if anyone is willing to be that volunteer person to lead it up. So I'm not sure at this point.
Yeah.
Where that stands.
So maybe we don't have to get super specific with that one, and it can remain as is, that we'll plan on hosting a community event with the museum, and if it ends up being that same opportunity again, cool. If not, we'll brew up something else with them.
So one activity I've given a little bit of thought to, and I'll just throw it out, it doesn't have to be in the plan, but seeing about getting the History Museum more involved in survey work and doing projects like that, or helping with projects like that. Because there's a lot of neighborhoods that could be surveyed. And I think I'd like to see that them get more, because it's, it's time consuming for the staff and for the commission, and it's costly. And my thought is pursuing that to see if there's a possibility of getting more involvement with their volunteers and their the resources they have to help out with that.
I don't think that's going to be something they're going to be interested in this next year. It might be a longer term thing.
Right.
Because they have their building under construction. They got a grant from the state that they're implementing resource RH. I forget the acronym, but the other grant that's available. And so I met with them to ask some questions about some things, and they told me they were pretty overwhelmed right now
Mhm.
through next year implementing the grant that they got and with their new construction.
Yeah, what is the grant for? Is it for to help with the construction?
I think it's to expand their the actual display of resources and so forth.
Okay.
And then the other thing is that because the city does fund them and has a contract specifying exactly how that money is going to be utilized, I think it would be a broader discussion to see. It would have to be with the city council to see if the council would want them to get involved with survey work, because they're doing other items. They do a lot of educational events and go out to schools and then also host things. And
Mhm.
but that's all outlined in their contract, what they're obligated to do
For the city as
for the city's funding.
funding.
Through
Okay.
the funding. So I think the answer would be that contract would have to include that for them to delve into that.
Okay.
that. And it could happen, but the contract starts with the fiscal year every year. So it starts in July.
Okay.
All right. The next bullet on there was regarding the Chautauqua Park Ridgewood community. most of that item has been completed. But obviously, well, want to see continued progress on that. So this is one I think we should probably revise or update to whatever our next step is in encouraging that to go through. Obviously, the the goal on this last year was to kind of weigh if that community supports nomination to the National Register or pursuing, becoming a local historic district. And reports we got back was that they did, and by a pretty good margin, support it. And it was mentioned on there as well to pursue grant funding for preparation of a nomination to the National Register. I know we discussed that at one of our earlier meetings this year. I don't recall if we had a result on that, if we received any grant funding to help with that or not, but
Yeah, so it went to the city council in October, the letter from the ad hoc committee, and city council was supportive of moving forward
yes.
with the grant application. And the actual grant application will be submitted this week.
Cool.
And
Okay.
it's going to council tomorrow night for final approval of this. They have to, the mayor includes a letter,
Yes.
so that will be included. It'll be submitted this week.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you for that.
So
update.
that was going well.
Yeah, so really we've checked off all of that bullet point. So I guess what would be the next steps for us as a commission in supporting that process?
There will be a neighborhood meeting once the draft is prepared to get input from the neighbors, and there will be communication with the neighborhood ongoing throughout the process. But the main the nomination will be handled by a consultant
Mm-hmm.
that will be
Yep.
funded by the grant. So it'll take quite a while. If everything goes well and it's approved, I anticipate it would go onto the National Register December of 2025.
Yeah.
That's how long it takes to go through all the reviews and
Yeah.
updates and comments. So,
Okay.
but I think just staying supportive and
Yeah.
being involved will be great.
Right. I think just our responsibilities of for the city of reviewing the project. I mean, I know we'll review the final product, so I'm assuming that there will be some sort of involvement in, like, someone on the commission would be on the interview committee, or is that
I don't know who will be on that review committee at this time.
okay?
Probably.
Is that, well, it's been a while since they've had a grant project that's used a consultant, hasn't it? So,
Yes.
yeah.
12
Every other place I've worked, there's always been a commission member on a review panel for a consultant. So,
It hasn't been specified who would be on in that whole, those details haven't been determined.
is that something we need to recommend or anything?
I don't think so at this point. I mean, I think we'll see what happens with the grant, and then we'll take it a step at a time.
Yeah, hopefully we get the grant. It's due next week or this week?
Do this week.
And then, do you know when the city will be notified? Did they?
They're saying maybe in March.
Okay. Okay. So that part is not extended. I think that's,
Well, last time we were notified in January.
oh, we were, okay.
it took a while. I think there was a change of staff. It took a while for them to get the contract out.
Yeah, yeah.
This time, I could tell things are, I think they would get the contract out in April. this time.
Okay, okay. It moves slow, I know.
All right. So I guess we don't have anything too detailed to add in that line, but other than just continuing to keep a pulse on it and supporting the project and encouraging Bob and his fellow neighbors to.
Yeah, well, if we participated all in by attending the meetings, that sort of
Mhm.
thing, I mean, that's an activity that should be
Yep.
included
Be
in the
present
work
and be
plan.
proponents. Mhm.
Eloise, at what point in the process would this neighborhood meeting take place?
It would be next October.
Okay,
It would be when the draft is getting ready to be submitted to the state so that the neighborhood can ask questions about the nomination.
Mhm. So that's after the grant has been approved.
Yes, it's after the grant's approved and you hire a consultant, the consultant will do research and prepare an initial draft. And that draft has to, they want to make sure that the neighbors are well aware
Mhm.
of what's happening and that they support the nomination. That's the whole purpose of it.
Okay.
All right. Moving down through some of these bullets, I think there are ones we can just say continuing on. To reach out to Old Town Historic District property owners with educational materials.
Mhm.
Probably just say continue that periodic disbursement of information with the newsletter. Continue to keep the historic preservation web pages updated. I'm not sure what all goes into that one. I'm assuming
That's-
that happens
So
a lot on
staff
the
does that.
back end on the
does
staff
that.
side. So, and then this one we could probably keep on there. You already touched on it, Mary Jo, but explore hosting NAPC program or webinar.
Mhm.
Other items, continue with funding for training of commission members and developing educational resources about Ames history and historic resources. That could probably remain.
Mhm.
Participate in educational opportunities afforded by the Preserve Iowa Summit. We took advantage of that this year and presume we would continue to. Continue Historic Preservation Commission Annual Historic Preservation Awards Program. That would continue coming up in April, May. May is Preservation Month and continue membership of the NAPC. So I think we'd probably keep all of those on.
Mhm.
I do have a comment about membership in the
Yes.
NAPC. I don't know why, but we never, as a city, received any correspondence from them or renewal of the membership.
Mm.
And when we tried to get involved, to look at the resources and so forth, I mean, I don't know what happened. It just seemed like we never heard anything. And then I know Susan had tried, I thought we had put a listing of all the members there for them to be sending information to you. And then I know Susan had worked to do that as well because it seemed like it wasn't there. But I don't know, Mary Jo, did you ever receive anything from them?
No, I know that, I think Susan did though. I guess because she was chair, but in the past, they've always sent mailings to the entire commission.
Mhm.
And maybe their policy is now to just send to a chair. I don't know.
I don't
Whether-
think so, because it was an opportunity to list everybody.
Yeah, I
So
know.
basically, I think the membership has lapsed
Mhm.
because it didn't seem like it was really, I mean, I know they're a great organization and they do these national conferences, so it was very confusing to me.
Yeah, I know.
That it seemed like there was a glitch in their administration.
Yeah. Well, it's all volunteers. I know that. And it's, as far as I know, there's never been any paid staff. So it probably depends on whoever is responsible for that now, maybe is.
So if
No.
anybody wants to look into that,
so,
I mean, you have a budget every year of $2,000 that includes going to conferences, these conferences, and participating or having a speaker for an educational event or membership in something. So you have some funding available to.
Yeah, I'll follow up a little more. I have known people that have been on their board, but I don't know if I know anybody now that's on it, but I'll try that avenue.
Okay.
See if we can get some,
Yeah.
little bit more action.
That's good. All right. Does anybody have any additional items to add to the educate the public section of this? Good there.
Can't think of anything.
Now we can move on to the next heading was promote the economic development and vitality of the city through historic preservation. Kind of on our 2023 plan was review tax credit speaker opportunities and continue granting certificates of appropriateness in a timely manner. Anything to add to those? Obviously, we'll keep looking to grant certificate of appropriatenesses in a timely manner. That's a evergreen one, but
We, as a commission, have maybe talked about wanting to be informed when certificate of appropriateness applications come through. It seemed like that was agreeable, that wouldn't cause a work burden. I mean, would that be potentially a place to add that in here?
So we don't get them every month, but so, I mean, how often are you thinking, like
Yeah, I don't
maybe
have a
once a year
maybe
or
once a year.
month?
Yeah. And I think the idea there was just so that we had an idea of what was coming through to the as like an informational thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I could tell you, I just looked at that today because one of the questions on this, well, even that, continue granting certificate of appropriateness, they ask a question about what topics and how many, and they want to know if anything's been any demolished buildings that were of historic value and that kind of thing. So there were 6 certificate of appropriatenesses issued last year. They were all done administratively. There were such things as window alterations, windows, storm windows, or storm door replacement. There was a violation for a door that was replaced, a solar panel, and it was on a garage that was off of an alley. So it's really easy to approve that one. What was the rest? The windows was the biggest one.
Yeah.
As you could guess. So, but nothing that was new construction, because new construction would come to you. So I don't think any of these had to go to the board. We do have an application right now from someone who is considering proposing alternative materials and whether they would want to just go with wood and then that staff can approve it, or whether they want to try to provide documentation and maybe get approval for something that's an alternative.
And that would come to the commission.
That
Or the
alternative materials would come to the commission, and so they might be coming in January if they don't just decide to go with the wood window.
Mhm.
Do you want to continue to try to do something with the tax credit speaker, or what are you what are your thoughts on that one?
I don't know. I feel like that was kind of on my plate. I hope I didn't let people down.
Mm.
So the administration of the state program kind of shifted gears, and but we did have some potential leads for some of the architects who have worked in this field and given presentations downtown before, who expressed interest in doing it. So I think the opportunity is there. We could find the people if we wanted to. So I may have just dropped the bag, and we could keep that on there for next year and get it done.
Well,
Yeah.
I just maybe presenting to the National Register, the potential National Register district on, giving them the information on the state credit, because
Mhm.
they will be eligible for it.
Yeah, and at the informational meeting that Eloise headed up, we did give them some of that information, both on
Yeah.
the state tax credit and the local stuff.
I think that would be a good thing to include in the presentation. And since you have the experience, if you could take charge of that. and
Yeah.
If that's appropriate, if the staff agrees, that would be a good thing to include, because there may be somebody interested in doing a rehab project and getting tax credits there.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
keep it on then.
Yeah,
And,
I think that would
I'll
be
head
good
that
to
up.
keep on.
Cool. Any other new bullet points come to mind for that section?
I can't think of anything.
If not, we can jump to the next heading, which was enhance municipal policies to protect historic resources and implement policies through identification, effective legislation, and efficient regulatory measures. So in there we had our continual review of Chapter 31, which is ongoing, though we've made some strides lately. And then we also had continue to review and participate in the city's climate action plan and provide comments on the role of historic preservation actions to support energy savings and renewal.
That could probably still be included, because I think that's still ongoing too.
Mhm. Okay.
Is that project still ongoing?
I know there was some information in the hall about it for a while. I'm personally not involved with it, so I don't remember where it's at exactly, but
Okay.
I guess it just depends on if you guys want to take that, try to do something with that. I think that educational outreach is really important, and you've kind of talked about some of that already.
Mhm.
It's up to you.
I think maybe just keeping it on our radar,
Yeah.
it might be a good idea.
Yeah, if that city's climate action plan is an ongoing thing, then that's good, because obviously historic resources help a lot there. Most energy efficient buildings are buildings that are already built. Just because you renovate them and put an efficient system in them.
Great.
Yeah. If you don't have to pour more concrete or make more steel, that's
That's right.
pretty energy efficient right there.
Yes, it is.
Mhm. All right, next heading is continue to use the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan as a working document. So our bullet points on there were review the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan report and determine next year's priorities and work plan in November or December. And then also had obtain approval from the city council for priorities determined by the commission following each review of the Ames Comprehensive Historic Preservation Plan report.
And that's kind of a yearly thing, I think. So,
Any other bullet points overall on the whole work plan? No? Any other, Eloise, any other questions or?
No, I think that
Notes
helps.
that we
I
could probably-
appreciate you going
Okay.
through it.
Mhm.
And I would just suggest that you keep in mind the Ames Historic Preservation Plan throughout the year as you're
Yep.
looking at how you spend your time.
All right, cool.
Can I ask, because I was unfamiliar with the action or the preservation plan prior to receiving this, obviously.
Right.
Is the goals, objectives, and action steps, is that just a part of it, or is this that was attached to the document the entire preservation plan in its entirety?
No, there's a huge, big preservation plan. It includes Chapter 31.
Okay.
It includes, some of it, it was done more than 10 years ago, but then they updated the goals a few years back.
Is that online on the website?
Yes,
Okay.
it's on the website under historic preservation.
Okay.
So you can look through it,
All
see what's there. Yeah. I think too, because you came on board by yourself kind of at a different time, we did try to go through that briefly with the new members when we actually had a new member orientation for the Historic Preservation Commission. I don't know that we had one with you. I apologize for that. Ray Anderson has been kind of ill lately, so we probably should have made an effort to do that, but I apologize.
That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, because you should have been aware of the preservation plan. But there is a lot of stuff on the website under historic preservation. And if you have any questions about any of that, or you find mistakes, let me know.
Sounds good. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, if there's no other discussion items there, I think we can move on to the next piece of our agenda, which is the Chapter 31 text amendment clarification.
So I know last time when we talked about Chapter 31 and the edits, my takeaway from that discussion was that we all needed some kind of guidance as to when a certificate of appropriateness is required. And we had a little bit of a discussion about this internally with staff. And so I think a how-to guide is very different from writing an ordinance that's in the code. And so I personally would probably put more how-to in the code, or it means this, but not that. But that's not the direction that extra language can lead to confusion sometimes, and it's better to just state what the limitations and then have some other kind of guidance. So I put together some information on this that I think will be helpful. I think it was helpful to me to work on it, but it's basically when is a certificate of appropriateness required, and the first side is talking about if you have a contributing structure, and then it goes on to talk about if you don't have a contributing principal structure. So, and I know that in Angie's memo, she alluded to some of this too. So we don't have to, we can go through this if you want, or I just thought it would be helpful. But back to the clarification. So my takeaway was that when we were talking about contributing garages, then the question was raised, well, what about non-contributing garages? And clarification on that. And then in the process, not sure we were we were as helpful to you as in that whole discussion, but basically the new language that we had as the takeaway was alteration of non-contributing garage to an ADU when it's located on a property with a contributing structure would require HPC approval of a certificate of appropriateness. And what we realized after the fact was that actually would add something that is not part of your purview at this point, because if it's an alteration of a non-contributing garage, it doesn't need a COA. And so this would be adding more strict restrictions. And I did not think that was your intent, but that's why we're bringing that language back to you to see what you want to do with it, or how staff should proceed. We are taking the final final draft of the wording tomorrow night to the city council for review on ADUs. And if there is language that needs to be added in on this, we can include that for their review.
Do you remember what section this was going to go under?
Well, we were talking about section 3110, paragraph 2, by adding item D. And we also talked about maybe putting it under item E.
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So I had a question. This is fabulous. This
Oh.
The sheet's
checklist.
awesome.
Yeah.
The sheet is awesome. Yeah. Okay. So the question at hand, I'm just trying to restate this, is whether or not the commission feels that in the case of a site that has a contributing primary residence and a non-contributing garage, if they want to turn that garage into an ADU, and it's more than just an internal conversion. So if there's something that you'll see on the outside, the question at hand is whether or not that might require a certificate of appropriateness, because it does not currently. And we're trying to decide if it should. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It does not require a certificate of appropriateness currently.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. On the list, the fifth one down. So it says, yes, a certificate of appropriateness is required when there's an addition to an existing non-contributing garage or accessory structure on the site.
Right.
Okay. How is that different?
The other one's an alteration.
Okay. How is an addition and an alteration different?
Okay, look on the back.
Okay.
Definitions. See, I saw your question.
Yep.
No, because I
Yeah.
had the question too.
This is stuff that goes on my mind every time.
So alteration is basically when there might be a change to the exterior features, like a window or door, but it doesn't increase the floor area. It could be a new roof. It could be a storm door. All those things we approved for COAs this year. New construction is an addition.
That does increase the square floor area.
Yes.
I gotcha. Thank you. Okay. So if it changes the square floor area, the current requirements is it would require a certificate of appropriateness.
Yes.
Okay. So we're just talking about an alteration, which
Yes.
would change some exterior feature, but not change the square footage.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And so in
Which I
the
think
code, there's
13.
alterations, there's demolitions, there's new construction, there's relocation, and there's repair. But mostly we deal with alterations and new construction. The others don't come up as much, but they're all kind of categories of the code.
I have some thoughts. I did drive around the district today because I actually have never done that. It's amazing. There are a lot of contributing garages there. I was surprised. Probably there's not a lot of properties that are going to be able to accommodate an ADU, for one thing. However, the worst case I can think of is someone who took like a 1980s, maybe 500-600 square foot garage that was visible from the street and created new openings, new siding. They could do anything they wanted to do because it's non-contributing. To me, that would have a pretty significant impact for the district and for that property if it had no review and they could do anything they wanted to. Another issue for me, I think, is if someone were able to do that with that large of a structure and their neighbor came in and they had no review. A neighbor came in to do a 150 square foot garden shed and they had to go under review. That doesn't seem real fair to me. So I think I have concern about the possible impact, visual impact on the contributing structure on that property as well as the district. I did do some wording that I thought, to me, it seems like the commission ought to make the decision. They ought to review any ADU except on a non-contributing property where there's a non-contributing historic resource. But if there is a contributing primary building, then I just think with all of the other things that are reviewed that are a yes on this list, that I think it doesn't make sense to allow something that could be potentially really awful. So I just think the commission should have that opportunity to review any ADU on a contributing property in a historic district and determine whether or not they should have review, if they should review the design, if it's considered a strict alteration. I'm trying to look at the broad picture of what could happen, and it probably wouldn't, but I think that's why we have the ordinances, to prevent something awful from happening. So rather than what's in the staff report, I think this is pretty neutral wording, but it also gives the commission the authority. But my wording would be any ADU within a designated landmark district shall require a certificate of appropriateness except on a property that has a non-contributing primary building. So, and my feeling about it, adding another level of review, doing an ADU in the district is already another level of review. So I don't think adding that provision for if it's appropriate to review a non-contributing garage that's being converted. I don't think it's adding.
Joe, what would be the review basis if you had a non-contributing garage come to the commission? Let's say it was a 1980s garage and they wanted to change the way that it looked. How would we review that?
Well, if it complies with all the other ADU requirements, the zoning requirements, we would just review the design of it
Based on what though?
based on compatibility. You know, the alteration should be compatible, just like the new construction.
Are we allowed to review things with a compatibility basis? Does it have to have
Well,
follow one of
it
the
depends on
design
which
styles?
section of the code you're using. If you're using that section that cites the Secretary of Interior standards, yes. If you're using the design guidelines, no. That's why we're making the changes we are to the design guideline part of for the ADUs.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a complicated matter, I will say that, but and I agree that ADUs should be allowed in a historic district. I think it's appropriate. But I mean, you know, the commission, if if we agree, I mean, we can still recommend that. The council can always do whatever they want with it. So, you know, staff recommends another thing, they can go with staff recommendation or do whatever they want to do. So, but from what our charge is, that just makes sense to me that it's protecting the historic district.
All right. I think as I'm processing this here, I get everything you're saying there, Mary Jo, and where you're coming from on that. I think it might be difficult or might create a gray area though, and that like the second bullet on our list here is just alteration of an existing non-contributing structure is no, it doesn't come to us. To say that only say alteration of a non-contributing structure into an ADU then comes to us, but any other alterations of existing non-contributing structures doesn't, is kind of like a half measure, and it leaves gaps in between. Because then what's to say stop a person from changing the siding on their garage? Say, hey, well, if I go to an ADU now, I have to go in front of the commission, but I'm going to change my siding on my garage now, 2 years down the road. Now I'm going to turn it into an ADU. Oh, my siding's already there. I'm not altering anything outside. I'm just doing an interior renovation of it. It's sidesteppable. So I think it's kind of a measure of, to not create the gray areas, it either has to be that just straight alteration of an existing non-contributing structure, whether it's to an ADU or whether it's just an alteration of garage, whatever it may be. has to just lump sum be a no or a yes. And I'd say I'm not sure we want to take the step right now to say that all existing non-contributing structures should come before us. So that would be my hesitation with it, I guess.
Yeah, but that's not saying that. That's saying only in the case of an ADU, if it's a non-contributing garage.
Yeah, I get that. I guess what I'm saying is I think if we say it's just ADU, it's kind of a half measure, whereas it should be, in my mind, for clarity, it should just be a straight, regardless of it's ADU or not, it just should either be, should alteration of an existing non-contributing structure, whether it's an ADU, to a garage, to whatever it be, it should just be a straight yes or no on if it's coming to us, whether or not an ADU is involved in there. Am I making sense there?
Mhm.
I'm having a little problem picturing what type of alteration would be so offensive, that it would be a problem. What could you do to a garage that would be so severe that it would be something that we'd want to have some control over?
Are there,
Uh,
We don't cover paint color.
You
does the
could-
zoning ordinance,
right, well,
Eloise?
You could cite it with tin siding. You
You can
could,
do that now, right?
but only, yeah, you could,
Or could have been built that way in the first place.
yeah. But the more alterations, I mean, you're gonna have more openings. You've got to have windows and doors. in
Well,
this
but
new
are more
structure.
windows or replaced windows, relocated windows and doors, is that a problem? Aesthetically or otherwise?
Well, all I'm saying, it could be. It could be. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, most people are going to probably do something that's compatible. I just don't think, I'm not doing it you're suggesting it as a stumbling block or a prohibition. It's more guidance and, someone could come in and do a very modern alteration that does, color-wise, everything that is.
But they could have done that in the first place in the 1980s, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't a historic district then.
Well,
Eloise, does the zoning ordinance in general, obviously there's different zoning types in town, but does it itself have, for residential districts, have requirements on what siding materials are allowed?
There is one section that does talk about materials, but it talks about, it's not part of the ADU, it's just part of the
Yes,
code.
yeah.
Talks
That's what I mean,
About
just in
materials
general.
for houses
Mhm.
of single-family structures, and it says that the garage will be of similar, not match the house, but it lists materials. So in
Yeah.
other words, you couldn't just do some
Yep.
cheapy thing that's not really a material typically used or something.
That was my thought, is maybe that is our control source on it. That's in a lot of city ordinances that you come across, especially in commercial zones, but also residential, that they'll break down, in zone MX2, you're allowed to have these as primary siding materials. And a lot of cities use that as their means to control, to keep somebody from putting
plywood.
ACM panels, an aluminum panel, formed panel in a zone that they don't want that look in, or put plywood or doing something like that. So that's just my thought, is, do we already have something in the overall zoning ordinance that kind of controls what they can put on the residents, and
It has
everything in that
some
list, things that
general-
we'd be generally okay with anyways?
It has some general language.
Okay.
Yes, I
Well,
think,
and really the broader issue to me is, I do think there's a danger of having something that maybe would look uh, not be compatible, but just, I don't know, like I say, somebody did a garage, a large, up to 750 square feet in their backyard that had no review, and then somebody has a 150 square foot shed and it's reviewed. It just, that to me is so unbalanced. I just, I just think the commission would not have be that restrictive on if as long as the ADU revisions to loosen those requirements for the different styles. That still leaves a lot of flexibility and an opportunity for people to do an alteration into an ADU that I don't think it's that restrictive. That it's, if somebody's going to go through the process of getting an ADU and comply with all the zoning requirements for that, having a little bit of a review by the commission on the materials and the design, I just can't see that. And it is a historic district. That's what we're trying to protect. This is the one historic district in this town that we have some review authority over. And I just, maybe the neighborhood would think it's unfair, but I still think they, for the most part, realize that our job is to protect their district and their property. So I think that's what we're doing if we're looking at the broader picture. And hopefully the gray areas can be cleared up when we get the rest of the ordinance reviewed.
Well, speaking as the homeowner in the district, I think the rules are kind of set up to protect historic structures and let the other structures be that as they may, which I think is a fair compromise to acknowledging that it's a living neighborhood. And I would default towards not adding extra review oversight for non-contributing structures. Just because I don't see the advantage that it provides. And I think you guys have raised some very fair points as far as if you're talking about non-contributing structures, whether or not it serves as an ADU or not should not be a line that we're judging it by. And the fairness as well. It does not make sense to let a large garage go by, but then regulate a large shed or something. But I think the solution is not to add more regulation. In my opinion, it's to probably back off of the shed as well. Particularly if we don't have a standard that we should be reviewing it against right now.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just putting the homeowner who might be looking at this project in kind of a black hole. Okay, so what's expected of me? I'm not really sure. So my opinion would be to not add us as a new oversight at this time.
Yeah. Well, swinging to the other side on that too, then why are we reviewing them at all? An ADU, if they comply with the zoning code. I mean, why are we revising our code for an ADU on loosening up on the design requirements that are too restrictive? Why don't we do that with all the buildings then? I mean, there are things you can go on and on and on with, but the problem is the ordinance. The problem is the ordinance. You can't really revise it well because it just makes it more confusing. And so, I mean, I would, well, I'm just trying to make it better, but I agree with you. I mean, if the ordinance says non-contributing structures aren't reviewed, that's the way it is, period. So. Anyway, do we need a motion or anything
I
like
think,
that?
yeah, they're requesting us to recommend our action on this one to take the city, so we do need a motion one way or the other. And the two alternatives that the city provided, and they're obviously in reference to that suggested text they had, alternative one, which staff, let me make sure I have that right. They're supporting alternative one, staff is to determine that the request to add the above reference language is not necessarily for implementation of ADUs within Old Town Historic District. Alternative two was to recommend revised language to that above if we want to further that discussion. So.
I'll move alternative one.
I second.
Any discussion before vote? No? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oppose.
Noted. All right. That takes care of that agenda item. All right. Next up, item number 7 is City Council motion regarding Chapter 31 update request.
Okay, I'll take that one. So at our last meeting, the staff conveyed that City Council's request for HPC to provide the additional support for why we wanted to continue looking at revising Section 3110. And so we drafted this memo to respond to that request. And in essence, it restates the request of specific edits that are being discussed for Section 3110, which is the section that regards certificates of appropriateness. And then in summary, it has 4 main points of the edits that we've been looking at. Number 1, edits for ADUs. And the way this is written, it says edits for ADUs are already in progress separately, and this item could be deleted from the HPC's request to continue looking at edits specific to ADUs. The second one, where we were talking about clarifying terms of art, such as building, structure, alteration, we were summarizing to say making these types of clarifying revisions are worth pursuing because they can be relatively straightforward and help the code be more user-friendly. The third in our list of potential edits, we're using the term historic resource to replace building and structure references. And this memo says, in doing so, that is maybe worth pursuing. It gets us in line with Secretary of the Interior language. However, it's a substantive change because it could broaden the coverage of COAs. So it warrants more discussion. And the fourth item is using the term compatible with instead of representative of when we're talking about styles in the district. So this is potentially a big one. And we kind of touched on it just now. And this memo says, focusing on compatibility preserves the historic character without creating a false history and can be valuable to residents from a cost, materials, and energy efficiency standpoint. So this memo is up for discussion amongst us tonight, and I'm happy to make any edits that come from it. And I think once we decide as a group that this is satisfactory, then next step would be to send it to council.
Wonderful. First off, thank you for putting that together, Angie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this covers everything that really well. And I think it's a good start and a good explanation. I think it sets down everything we've discussed and everything they need to know. So,
Thank you.
very good.
Appreciate that.
Just two very, very minor things. Under clarity bullet point there, something got left off, which defined when a COA, what, is required.
Is required. Yep. Yep. That was just an inadvertent deletion. Got it.
And on page 3, fourth full paragraph, last sentence, last line, building materials, blah, 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 have advanced since the last revision of chapter 31. And then this isn't a correct date. I'm partly responsible for that. So just delete, I guess, which was a long time ago. I don't know the date.
I don't know the date either. Take responsibility for that. I wasn't sure of the history of the ordinance. And so unless somebody knows the history of it, the context here was when this the bulk of this wording was developed and the building materials that were available at that time, you know.
So what, chapter 31 was revised in 2014.
2014. Okay. Thank you.
So 9 years ago.
Got it. So I think I might just delete that because I was just factually wrong.
That's all I had.
Yeah, you could just say the building materials and options for efficiency have advanced. And, you know,
I think this is really good. And it does a really good job of identifying what we want assistance with and why we want assistance with those items. The justification, I think you did a really good job of laying that all out. I can't remember if in our initial meeting where this was brought up that we needed to write this, did we need to include how we expect them to help us with this? I know let's see here. The specific planning staff support requested relates to, and then you list 2 items. There's not a direct, I guess, kind of connection drawn between that support and how it helps us with these things.
Oh, sure.
So like research assistant, I think it's more specific for number 2, the research assistants. How do we anticipate using that research? Are we gathering other examples in order to help influence the changes that we intend to make? Or is it just for our knowledge, I guess? You know, I think including something like that might help us bring the whole thing full circle.
That's fair. Yep. All right, those are excellent comments, and I am more than happy to revise this and get it right back into circulation. Anything else from the commission?
Nope.
So restate first page, number 1 and number 2, add a sentence on how specifically the requested staff would help bring this full circle. Basically, yes, we want to incorporate some of the things we get from NAPC in terms of model language or other research, and we need staff help to help us make this good, right? And we've talked a lot about edits, and they need more refinement and professional input. So make that edit. On the clarity bullet, add in is required at the end of the sentence so that it makes sense, and then delete the inaccurate date on the 3rd page. So once I do those, is the commission good with sending that on to city council?
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
do we need a formal vote on?
I don't think we need a motion on anything
Okay.
there.
I'm not sure.
That's just kind of review of the document and edits to it. So I don't think we, yeah. All right. That brings us to commission comments.
I did have a note from Laura that our normal HPC date in November next year will be on Veterans Day.
Mhm.
Office is closed. So you don't have to decide right now, but we will need to know how you want to address that, if you want to select a different day to meet for November next year.
Sounds good. Do we want to resolve that now? Is it a matter of, I guess it's kind of just a matter of, do we
We'd have to.
push it like,
If you give some recommendations, then we'll have to check the city calendar and other commission meetings and.
yeah, that'd be what I'm wondering. Does it work best for us to like keep it on a Monday and just push it a week, or does it make more sense to slide it a day? I don't know how many of the other commissions and stuff or what their schedules look like, that we don't get too packed on top of them, but
Probably a Monday would be,
probably
Maybe
sticking
easier,
to the
'cause
Monday.
Tuesday's
Yeah.
city council meeting.
Yeah, true.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So I guess that'd be my first proposal, is we just look at
Just
sliding
the
it a week and
following
keeping
week.
it on Monday.
Yeah, I think we could do that.
Yeah.
Just,
We'll bring that back to you if there's any problem.
Sounds good. All right. I guess that was kind of commission comments and staff comments. So anything else from the group?
Mm-mm.
All right. If not, I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.